Why is it that some people can speak 7 languages when the rest of us can barely speak 1?
I can speak Japanese, English, Turkish, and German fluently.
So Indonesian, I speak fluent English. I'm learning Korean, I know German, and a little bit of Chinese and Japanese.
I've learned 6 foreign languages.
Where there is a difference in outcome, there is always a difference in process. So let me show you what you're doing wrong and what these people are doing right. Hi, I'm Jenna. I'm a software engineer who loves learning languages. And although I'm only fluent in English, I have had conversations in Urdu, Japanese, and Arabic. In high school, I tried to take the learning that I did in my German classroom and use it in Germany, and it completely failed me. And there are a lot of reasons that I wasn't able to use German in real life context, that I was able to have conversations in 3 other languages. And in this video, I want to share these secrets with you. To explain this, I'll be going through Stephen Krashen's famous paper, Principles and Practice in Second Language Acquisition. Krashen is an absolute rock star in the language learning world. And if you want to hear about his most important tips for learning a second language, stay to the end of this video. This video is for people who want to speak the language. The main mistake a lot of us make when we're on our language learning journeys is focusing on completely the wrong thing. Is knowing how to conjugate a verb into 5 different tenses on the spot a way to have a conversation with someone? No, in fact, it may slow you down. I remember trying to talk to a woman at a station in Germany to get directions for the train and to flex my German skills in front of my mum. The focus on grammar rules can create anxiety and panic when, in the heat of the moment, you have to think about 5 different tense endings that you could use. How do you manage this in your native tongue? Do you think about how to conjugate a verb mid-flow speech, or do you just do it? This is what Stephen describes as the language acquisition distinction. Children acquire languages, whereas most adults attempt to learn them. Acquiring is a subconscious process, and as Stephen puts it, acquirers have a feel for correctness. For example, an acquirer such as yourself, when you were a child learning English for the first time, might not be able to tell you why this sentence is wrong. He don't like to play football, but they will know that it is. Simply put, instead of trying to learn a language, we attempt to pick it up. I know what you're thinking, easier said than done. That's where the next 4 points come in. But it's really important to set our focus right at the start. We will not be rote memorizing functions and names of grammar rules. This does not help us reach our ultimate goal, which is to be able to actually use the language. So what do we do instead if we want to learn Chinese or Spanish or French? This is where Krashen's input hypothesis comes in. Comprehensible input is what Krashen describes as one level above where you are. This is also referred to as the Goldilocks theory. If we use material that is too cold, i.e. too easy, we learn nothing and become bored. If you're older than 10, think about someone teaching you maths by giving you addition equations. However, if we use material that is too hot, i.e. too difficult, we become frustrated and we give up. Think about doing university level differentiation when you haven't even done the GCSE yet. To learn effectively, we need it just right, which is just a little bit harder than what we're comfortable with. This space is where we do our best learning. When we do this, we in turn feel encouraged by our improvement and we want to continue learning, which becomes an endless cycle. This type of learning is most effective not in a classroom setting, but in real life conversation. So focus on getting straight into naturally speaking as quickly as you can. This is where the sponsor of this video comes in, italki. I've used italki for every single language that I've learned. When I surprised my friend Aisha with Japanese, I was actually unable to string a sentence together for 4.5 months, despite studying that whole time. Then I got real with my goals and I set a hard and fast deadline of being able to have a conversation in just under a month. I booked 2 one-hour sessions of speaking every single day on italki. I knew that the only way to make the amount of progress I wanted in such a short time frame was just to get as many reps as I could in as possible. So to just basically speak as much as I could. italki was the perfect app. I tried other pen pal ones, but I could never hit the ground running like I wanted to. With italki, I could have one-on-one lessons where I could speak in Japanese for the entire hour. I could speak to native Japanese speakers without the ridiculous cost of a private tutor. By the way, where I live near London, these go for £30 to £50 an hour. That's something I could never afford. With italki, I had the freedom and flexibility to book a lesson and start talking when and wherever I wanted to. I developed some of the loveliest memories with my teachers who taught me so much.
東京で、何を知っていましたか？
東京ですか？
うん。
東京は旅行したことがあります。
何を
なんか
見ましたか？
スカイツリー知ってますか？スカイツリー。はい。ちょっと有名な場所。
本当に有名な場所。
東京ディズニーランド。ディズニーランド、わかりますか？
はい。
はい。行きました。遊びに行きました。
ディズニーランドに行ったことがありません。
ないですか？
はい。
行きたいですか？行きたいです
本当に行
か？
きたいです。
とっても楽しいです。
とっても値段が高いです。
そうですね。ちょっと高いですね。ディズニーランドはとても面白いですね。ミッキーがかわいいです。
वो क्या नाम था What's Love Got to Do with It?
जी जी जी
पाकिस्तानी ब्राइड थी उसका पता है क्योंकि वो बहुत फेमस पाकिस्तानी एक्ट्रेस है वो
वाकई मुझे नहीं पता जब मैं देखती थी
हाँ उसका नाम सज्जल अली है वो बहुत फेमस पाकिस्तानी एक्ट्रेस है
और डायरेक्टर ये इमरान खान की पुरानी
वो जमाइमा को भी पाकिस्तान में बहुत लोग पसंद करते हैं अभी तक इवन के इमरान खान से उसकी डिवोर्स हो गई है लेकिन अभी भी उसको भाभी ही कहते हैं
एक्साइटेड ये क्या है जोश मैंने पुरजोश मैं बहुत पुरजोश थी लेकिन एशियन की सकाफत के बारे में कुछ मूवीज नहीं है हॉलीवुड की फिल्म्स कुछ भी नहीं है italki completely changed the game for my language learning and there's not a single language I would attempt to learn without using it. So if you want to try out your first italki lesson, click the link in the description below and get $5 free when you spend $10 in credits using my promo code JANNA5. But this offer is only good for the first 50 users, so definitely hurry if you're interested in using that. We never feel ready to start talking in another language. There are always going to be more words to learn. But my advice here is to just start from day one. You won't be able to, but start anyway. Before even learning a single word, book a lesson and talk to someone who can at least teach you how to say, hello, how are you, and I'm good, thanks. This takes the fear out of speaking, which is honestly your number one hurdle. It's that voice in your head that tells you sound stupid. Don't worry, you do, and so do I, but that's the point. We're learning, so we're supposed to sound silly. You'll have to learn the words at some point, but by speaking first, you'll be doing that in parallel to actually using the language, which is Krashen's whole theory of acquisition. The natural order hypothesis looks at the natural order that grammar rules are learned in by looking at studies on children. So interestingly, certain grammar structures are acquired earlier than others. In his paper, Krashen cites Brown's study of children acquiring English. Interestingly, the study found that the S marker for plurals, as in cats and dogs, was acquired up to a year earlier than the possessive S, as in Molly's purse. This order occurs regardless of the order that the rules are taught in, suggesting that they're not learned from classroom study, but from something more subconscious and natural. But what does that mean for us? When learning grammar, it's really important to focus on understanding and speaking instead of sitting down and rote memorizing or studying the grammar itself. Like the children in those studies, if we try and sit down and learn the grammar, our brains are going to learn them at their own pace anyway. So it's better to focus on the language itself over the rules that govern it. So the third theory that we're going to look at is the monitor hypothesis. The monitor hypothesis looks at how we improve our language. Monitoring is talking about conscious learning. So think about if you made a mistake on verb conjugation and then corrected yourself. In order to monitor, you have to have three things: time, focus, and knowledge of the rule. Think about any conversation in any language you've used. Did you have time to think, focus, and then recall the rules of the sentence you were trying to say? Chances are no. And this is why we should be monitoring in moderation. Krashen describes three types of people: the over-monitor, the under-monitor, and the optimal monitor. Most of us are over-monitors. We're over-cautious about our application of grammar and vocabulary, and we rely heavily on our knowledge of concepts and rules. This makes us anxious and constantly second-guess ourselves because we're always thinking about how stupid we must sound to the other person. This leads to conversations full of ums and self-correction. Sound familiar? On the other hand, underusers rely completely on their acquisition system and know nothing about grammar rules. These people have great fluency in their conversation and everything they say is understood by the other person, but they're going to have lots of errors in their grammar application. Finally, you have the optimal user. This person balances their acquisition and their learning systems. So an optimal user doesn't rely on self-correction too much. They're confident, but they don't disregard the rules completely, and that's what we're aiming for. An optimal user knows how to apply rules, but doesn't hyperfixate on them. They correct themselves when it's appropriate, but never when it interrupts their flow of speech. So key takeaways at the end of this video. Number 1, we want to acquire languages and not learn them. This is because speaking is a much more subconscious and intuitive process where decisions are made in split seconds, as opposed to conscious decisions that can be made mid-sentence. Point number 2, trying to learn grammar goes against natural order. So we should be aware of some basic rules, but the focus should always be in speaking, listening, and reading. And the more we get practice in those things, the more we'll start to intuitively know what sounds right. Point number 3, to improve, we have to start monitoring or correcting ourselves. But don't overdo this. Exercise it moderately and appropriately. Go into conversations confident and open to correction, but don't hyperfixate on sounding perfect and don't interrupt your flow of speech. The flow of conversation is always most important. Point number 4, comprehensible input is just the right level of difficulty. It's not too hard and it's not too easy. To increase our comprehension, we should focus on reading, writing, and speaking at that sweet spot. In the words of Krashen himself, language acquisition occurs when language is used for what it was designed for, communication. So get stuck into communicating and book your first lesson on italki. If you do, let me know how it goes in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Bye! By the way, I've linked Krashen's research paper that I used to make this whole video in the description below, so definitely check that out. It's an amazing paper. And I've also linked all of the other YouTubers that have popped up in this video, so definitely go check out the description and all those people that I've mentioned.